Hello, my friends. It's Sachin. Hope you're doing amazing. Today, a very special guest, somebody who's helped me personally improve my health and most importantly, my self-awareness. I have toxicity expert and true like maverick of this information, Sinclair Canali. Thank you, Sinclair, for taking time out of your busy schedule, joining me today and helping share this powerful information with our audience.
It's my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Well, thank you. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we were having some construction done in our home, and you and I were in the midst of this conversation about EMF. And you and your team was so kind and so gracious. You shipped me over pretty much overnight these unique sensors for me to measure, activity in my home that could be disruptive and discombobulating, if you will, to my health. And I learned so much in that session that I said, you know what, I've got to have Sinclair on to educate the masses. And I want to help her put this information out there into the world because practitioners need to know this. It could be a hidden cause of what's disrupting a client's healing or inhibiting them from getting the results that the practitioner wants and the client wants. And it's something that the average person needs to know. The health enthusiast certainly needs to know because this could be some low background noise or significant background noise in some cases that's being really disruptive to their health goals, whether it's getting pregnant, raising healthy kids, having good deep sleep. A variety of things can be impacted by EMF. So today we're going to teach people how to un-EMF themselves. And I know that this could be a very extensive topic and you do, multiple days of training on this. So I'd love to give people some nuggets that they can walk away with. But before we do that, I'd love to know how you got into this, because this is such an important topic, but it can also be met with a lot of, head scratching, right? I'm sure you've been called all kinds of things, in the early stages of introducing this information to people, right? But I'd love to know what prompted you to get into, toxicity and helping people detoxify, not just things that they can see, but things that they can't see, like EMF.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And yeah, that's a really important question because I don't think any of us get into this the easy way. I know I certainly didn't. I had been kind of on the edge, kind of going in and out of chronic illness for much of my life and not really realizing it because we don't have good language for it until we have a full-blown diagnosis, right? So in our Western society, in fact, you did a great post about that today, about listening to our bodies early on. So for me, it was a little bit of a surprise to finally come to like the biggest crash of my life in my mid-20s. I had just met Michael, my partner in all things. He's the other practitioner in our practice. And we met, fell in love, moved in together, and our health crashed together like almost immediately within just a couple of months. And one of the key things that we realized much later looking back is that we had hid the router under the bed because it was ugly. So I wanted to tuck it out of sight. And we were sleeping in a high body voltage environment and a high RF environment, and we didn't even realize it. So all of the factors under the surface that we've both been struggling with our health in various ways up until then really came to the forefront because our bodies were not able to regenerate while we slept. So that's a foundational part of what we teach people now, having gone through all this training and many, many years later, and now having helped hundreds of people with this, is that you really need to protect your sleep. It's not just about, like, when we think about EMS, we think, oh, cell phone towers, my cell phone's probably not good for me, but I have to use it. I don't know how much I want to get into this, but really priority number one is understanding the 3 different types of EMFs that affect you the most and protecting your sleep so that your body can heal.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page there. Anything to improve sleep, right? Sleep is the new black, as we say in the functional wellness world. And how you're healing is determined, very importantly, by how well you sleep. So there's visible things that we know affect our sleep, like, bad lighting, blue lighting, excessive screen time, a lack of sunlight in nature. But EMF is like an invisible thing. Some people can feel it, right? So I want to acknowledge that because some people can be very EMF sensitive. I remember I had a patient of mine who was very EMF sensitive, and she lived in a condo. So she didn't have an option. That was her situation that she was in, but just being berated essentially by this invisible force that she couldn't escape. And I know one thing that a lot of people will try to do is they will try to utilize mitigation strategies, right? Mm-hmm. But when you live in a condo and there's like 20 routers around you, I'm not sure how effective it can be, because you can control your environment, but then what other people do is much more challenging to control. So with that being said, one of the things that you did that really opened up my eyes was you made it very objective, right? So as a practitioner, as somebody who likes numbers, this simple device, yet powerful device, really helped highlight that I was sleeping in a toxic environment. In fact, I was so curious, and I'll share this little story. I was so curious about Teslas, and my brother has a Tesla, and I'm like scratching my head, and I wasn't sure, are these things EMF toxic? Are they not EMF toxic? And what I realized using this sensor, which you can tell me if this is the right sensor to use for that or not, mm-hmm. but this sensor actually was more lit up in my living room than it was in his Tesla. So I realized that I was sitting in something worse, and the Tesla actually didn't really register. So I was kind of, maybe they're doing something to protect people from that, but I was actually quite shocked that this thing was quiet in his car, but it was screaming in my living room. So
that's really interesting, because basically any car is a Faraday cage. So when you're adding Wi-Fi and Bluetooth in it, you're adding and that signal keeps bouncing and slicing in and out of your body for quite a while. So that is really telling such.
So yeah, it was very eye-opening for me, and so I'm so eternally grateful for you bringing this to my awareness. And let's dive right in. Where are the places that you like to start with the clients that you work with, or the practitioners that you train? Where's a good place to start with this information?
Well, I think it's really important to understand that there are several different types of EMFs. So maybe I could just quickly share a slide, sure. If that's all right. So you can see right here that when we're talking about EMFs, Sachin and I might be bouncing around from EMF to EMF, but we'll be really deliberate for the rest of this conversation, so you always know where we are. We've been talking about wireless radiation right here, which comes from Wi-Fi routers and cell phone towers and cell phones, and all of our lovely intelligent smart devices, which aren't actually that intelligent for the body for the most part. And then there's dirty electricity, which is that extra noise that is traveling along our wires above 60 cycles per second in the home. And that's caused by your appliances. It's caused by the weird stuff your neighbor is doing down the block that you will never see. And it's getting worse and worse, even in the last 10 years exponentially. That is really disruptive to the body. And you have to use a meter to measure that as well. So the Wi-Fi or the EMF RF type of distress, you're using one meter. And then the dirty electricity, you're using a different meter. And then you have AC magnetic fields and electrical fields, and that you're measuring as body voltage on your body. Like, what is the electrical field of my body having to interact with, and how is it getting disrupted by the sources of electricity around me? And that matters just as much as the cell phones and the Wi-Fi routers and all that. So it's important to understand that we're looking, and of course, lighting, which Sachin does a great job of explaining to his community. This is essential to really understand and become light literate today. Blue light versus, infrared. These have very different effects on the body, right? So when we think about prioritizing EMF mitigation, we want to think about measuring for all three different types of distress where you're spending the most time. So we always start with the sleeping area, because the body is the most vulnerable while you're sleeping, and it has the least tolerance for these disruptive signals. And you're spending the longest amount of time there as well. So while you're sleeping, your body wants to use all those wonderful inputs that you've made deliberate choices about during the day. Your supplements, the quality of your water, the quality of your food, your breath work, setting up and healing your metabolism and, your oxygen exchange rate. All these things really come into play while you sleep, because that's when your body is doing the most regeneration, repair, detox, and drainage. You're supposed to flush out everything that's accumulated during the day. And it's crucial to understand that for any of these different types of distress, they can stop your body from doing that. They can stop your body from building those complex detox enzyme chains. It can literally stop your cells from regenerating and repairing. So that is thing number one. And then, of course, your workspace, because we're getting high exposures there. And, you know, it's really fascinating when you look at your relaxing spaces. If you're spending a couple hours on your couch at night, chances are one end of the couch is easier on your body than the other. It really can be that fine-tuned. And how you're sitting and using your space matters a lot. And the other things that you've placed in your environment. And then, of course, we want to look at your eating areas, because we want to really understand, is my body in a position to be in that rest, digest, repair mode when we're eating? Because in a high EMF environment, you cannot enter parasympathetic dominant states. So you really can't write down your food the way you want to. And your microbes are responding to the EMFs like, whoa, this is really a lot of stimulus. And they have a lot of strategies around that. Often it's about dumping poisons and accelerating their reproduction rates. So you can get really chronic dysbiosis just from putting yourself in high EMF environments. So it matters a lot. If you have digestive issues, take note, okay? And if you work with clients and patients with digestive issues, you know, this can be the key to unlocking and making all of your protocols that you're already doing far more effective.
You know, when we went through this exercise, because of how important my sleep is to me, I wanted to, I'm like, let's take this sensor right into the bedroom and figure out what I can do. And I was utterly shocked at the results. And one thing that I thought I was doing right was I bought a organic latex mattress, right? And this is like when keeping it real goes wrong. I don't know if you ever watched Dave Chappelle, but there's you know, when keeping it real goes wrong is a series of skits that he does. So this kind of reminded me of that, because here I thought my mattress was good for me, and certainly that's I'm sure the case, but I had an adjustable bed frame, and that adjustable bed frame was creating major disturbances. So we went from one room to the next room to the next room, and we discovered that intuitively I had kind of felt that I should be sleeping downstairs in my basement, which is the room underneath. We have a bungalow, so it's the room underneath my master bedroom. Yeah. And I had intuitively thought that, you know, for whatever reason, I feel called to sleep down there. Kind of ignored it. And then when we measured it, that was by far the lowest reading that I got. So it was super enlightening. We immediately unplugged the adjustable base, because most of the time I don't use it anyways. And that made the reading go down. Next step is get rid of it altogether. Give it to someone I don't like.
Yeah, not a loved one.
Yeah. And really, you know, taking other mitigating strategies. So that was really fascinating for me. I'd love for you to share like some of your favorite case studies. That's certainly my favorite case study because it involves me and my wife and my family. But what's some of your favorite case studies?
Well, for us, we were both like Michael and I were both several years into trying to heal, and we'd gone to every specialist, every functional medicine celebrity, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, had attended all the conferences and started to, you know, go back to school for this, just in the attempt to get well ourselves, because we both started in mental health and then we got too sick to maintain our practices. And so when we finally realized that the Wi-Fi router was disrupting our sleep, Michael figured it out first, and he literally threw it out. He's like, this is a no-go. This isn't worth it. We need to be well. And I was not on board with that, to be honest with you, because I hadn't seen the data yet. So I recommend bringing your family along with you on your EMF discovery journey. It's not enough to un-EMF yourself if your family is going to sneak around and try to put stuff back together. You want to really be the ambassador here and the advocate and really explain the good reasons why. Because I was pretty cranky about it until I realized that my animals, our two cats, had stopped fighting. And our male cat was extremely sick and couldn't move and was always really crotchety. And he just moved very gingerly. And he was a very young cat. It was really weird. And that stopped as soon as we threw the Wi-Fi router out. I thought that was really interesting. And then I know, right? And Michael was really anxious at work. So that was RF. That was kind of my discovery journey there. Michael was really anxious at our office building. And he had a really hard time, and it was really weird because he had total control over his day. It was our company, we got to decide what was a good use of our time and not, when to come in, when to leave. And he just could not shake this high anxiety in the building. And he discovered the dirty electricity, which is this guy. Remember, that's that extra noise on your wires, was extremely high in our office building. It was 1900 in his office. And you want this number below 50. Just for context, this meter stops working at 2000, it blows out. So he was right at that edge, and that's considered catastrophic.
Wow. So for people who can't see that, who are listening perhaps to the podcast, can you describe what you're holding?
Yeah, so this is a Stetzerizer dirty electricity meter, and they're very reasonable. We sell them, but you can find them other places. And it's so worth it. Like, buy one for your circle, loan it around, split up the cost, whatever it takes, because this alone can be a big deal. And it's often overlooked in the EMF world, which I think is insane, because it's becoming ever more year over year an exponentially bigger problem because of how we use electrical devices. So we put in these little plugs, these filters. You can get them from the Stetzer as a manufacturer, or Greenwave, that's the other manufacturer, throughout the office, and we didn't tell anybody. And sick days went down immediately. Interdepartmental fighting went down. We had some really contentious employees, and we were always trying to coach them through it, and let's communicate. And that all of that hard work went away because they were not getting zapped anymore. So that was another big wake-up call. And then we finally realized that the body voltage in our bedroom where we slept was over 5 volts. And over 1 volt is considered catastrophic. When you're sleeping, you want to be around ideally 10 millivolts. And that's how you would find that out, is from this multimeter here as a body voltage kit.
So Sinclair, I'm going to play devil's advocate. Because somebody might be wondering, when you say catastrophic, they might be thinking, well, I've been sleeping in this bed with all of these devices around me and I'm here and I'm quote unquote fine. So what would that look or feel like, or how would that show up for somebody when you say catastrophic, right?
That's a great question. Yeah. So for some of us, we're lucky to notice the effects right away. But it's important to understand that each EMF type is affecting 100% of the population. You will see it show up on your labs. So you may not be consciously aware, but it's affecting 100% of us. Now, 30% of us experience visible symptoms that are trackable and measurable to the person themselves. And 5% of the population is considered electro hypersensitive. And that's a disease classification from the World Health Organization that describes basically, hey, I am so sensitive to EMFs that I'm aware when I am in proximity to them. Like, I can feel my heart rate go up, or my blood sugar, or I start getting rashes or fatigue, brain fog, irritability, anxiety, digestion, upset. They're that sensitive. They start getting achy, like fibromyalgia type symptoms. And then as they reduce their proximity, those go down. So
proximity is huge, is what I'm hearing.
Proximity is everything.
You probably know Ben Lynch, and I still remember this story about how a parent was coming in complaining about their child's behavior, sleep, crankiness, and they were doing all the things right. However, the router was under the child's bed, and when they removed it, I know it sounds, even if you thought these things were, I can't imagine people think they're neutral, right? It's certainly not good for you. Like, nobody would ever say, hey, you've got a headache, put a router next to your face, right?
Right.
So the assumption is that these things are somewhat disruptive, but immediately when the child had that Wi-Fi router removed, their behavior, significantly changed. So it's pretty cool. Like, when you have adults I feel like adults tend to sweep things under the rug a lot more. And they are able to, because of our overly developed neocortex, in some cases, we tend to suppress how we feel. Whereas children and animals, like your cats, they don't lie, right? And we can observe their behavior change almost immediately. So it's cool to see that taking place almost, instantly for people.
Absolutely. We were treating a whole family, and the dad came to us in a total health crash, and he had candidiasis all over his body and in the map of his lymph nodes. Like, he was clearly not draining. And no one had ever talked to him about it in that context before. And of course, we did EMF mitigation right away. And one of the things that we discovered is that they had two little girls, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And the 5-year-old had gotten this horrible reputation in the family of being the difficult one. She's the one that acts out. She's hysterical. She's dramatic. She's always been a problem. Well, the Wi-Fi router was right on the other side of her bed, on the other side of the wall. This stuff travels through walls, guys. This is, those are not barriers. Barriers are Faraday cages and shielding specifically designed to stop frequencies in their tracks, but walls are not barriers. And so she was a nightmare in the parents' words. Every time she they tried to put her to bed, she would, get out of bed 15 times. Like, she just would not go. She would cry, "I don't want to be in my bed, mommy. Please let me sleep with you." And they thought of her as extremely difficult. They were going to a child psychologist 3 times a week, but they had never done any gut support, and they had never done any EMF mitigation. And we got the Wi-Fi router away from her bed and shut it down. We totally reworked their house, and she was a different little girl in 30 days.
Wow. So what can somebody do? Like, if somebody's watching this and they want to take some immediate action steps, what are some really quick, easy, low-hanging fruit tips that you can provide?
Well, remember, we always start with our sleep, right? So it's really important to make sure that you are not getting exposed to unnecessary stimulation while you're trying to sleep in the bedroom, especially. And distance is everything, just like Sachin said. So you may not be ready to throw out your Wi-Fi router and go back to hard cabling, but you do need to turn it off while you try to sleep at night. That's good for the whole family. And the farther away from where you're spending your time, throughout the day, the better, right? So, and you can use a $5 lamp timer from, the hardware store. That's no big deal. Let's try to avoid Amazon, right? Let's not feed the beast. But so that way you never even have to remember. You can have a set agreed, hours for the whole family knows, at 11 o'clock at night, the Wi-Fi router is turning off, and by 8 a.m. it'll be back on again. So that's thing one, and unplugging anything unnecessary in your bedroom, because that's more about the body voltage and the dirty electricity. In some ways, RF is easier because you understand when a device is designed to blast a signal at you, but you can't see without the use of a meter. The meters tell the story, how much body voltage you're sitting in and literally cooking in. So unplug everything unnecessary around the bedroom. Like, we get photos from people all the time. Hey, what do you think about this? And they've got like 7 chargers next to their bed. This is not your charging station. Get it away from your body. They've got like 3 power strips. Like, no. And also remember that, any metal is adding to your body mass while you sleep. So metal bed frames are a no-no. We had one woman who had seen every functional medicine celebrity on the block and was still really struggling with SIBO, psoriasis, and serious liver issues, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and really intense gallstones. And she had already had her house EMF mitigated for RF, which is those smart devices, right? And our Wi-Fi routers and all that, but she had never done the body voltage and the dirty electricity. And we discovered that she was trying to sleep in 19 volts, which again is 1,900 times what building biologists, the ones who set the standards for this, out of Germany, have investigated and declared that's over the threshold of biological effects by 1,900 times.
So that answers my earlier question, which is that's what catastrophic means.
Yes, right? Exactly.
When you have multiple organ failure, like systems failing, nobody can figure out what's going on. And a lot of people fit that bill, right? Where they kind of bounce around from one person to the next, and they just simply can't figure out what's going on and keep changing their diet, maybe keep ordering more labs or ordering more, a variety of supplement protocols, but
exactly, exactly. So these symptoms start to show up. For anybody just listening to the audio, we're looking at slow healing, disrupted sleep, anxiety, depression, overwhelm, irritability, brain fog, disrupted attention, hyperactivity. That's what our little ones are doing. They're responding to these EMFs. It's a really different world than what we grew up in. weight gain, headaches, disproportionate reactions to stressors, fatigue, lack of stamina, decreased desire to engage socially. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy where we live on our devices rather than connecting human to human, because the more we live on our devices, the harder it is to show up and be present with people. We actually lose those skills. Digestion distress, elevated blood sugar, disrupted sleep and insomnia, fertility and libido issues. People come to us all the time. We have guys in their early 30s with, erectile dysfunction issues. This is the direct result of their exposure to EMFs and processed foods. Rapid aging, parasites, stones. So those are symptoms that you could feel. These are conditions that have been linked. There are over 14,000 studies that measure the effects of EMFs on human health. This is not an edgy topic. We just don't get to hear about it on the news because big telecom is actually 5 to 6 times more powerful in political lobbying, at least in the United States, than big pharma is. It's very interesting, right? So, maybe we could post this list of conditions below your the video, because I want to be mindful of time, but we're looking at everything from leukemia, depression, diabetes, ADD, ADHD, obviously, Alzheimer's, autism, birth defects, premature birth, macular degeneration, tinnitus is a huge one, diabetes, sleep disorders, hormone disruption. The list goes on and on. Tumors are a big one, that I didn't know, I didn't feel anything. I just pushed through. I just thought I was getting older. And then, oops, found out I've been living in a high EMF environment. And the way we discover that is because you have tumors and now you're suddenly looking for answers finally.
Wow.
I know. So that's the answer to the question about what does catastrophic mean? It means that your body is no longer able to keep up with the basic processes that keep you healthy because it's been so disrupted by these EMFs. But guys, anybody who's listening to this and maybe your heart rate is rising a little bit and you're wondering, or you're starting to put the pieces together for yourself or maybe a loved one, remember that this is all fixable. It's measurable, right? And so it's always fixable.
Yeah, that's what's encouraging, because if you were to tell me that, hey, there's nothing we can do about this, then this would be like a doomsday type of conversation, right? But there's lots of things that we can do. You gave us some really foundational things that we can do, but I also know you've got some advanced knowledge that you also offer. And I'd love for you to speak about that and enlighten people, because I've witnessed myself firsthand, and I don't endorse anything or anyone until I've used their services or tapped into their wisdom and benefited in some way. So I'd love for you to share with our community what they can do, because I'm not the expert in this, you are, and I want to definitely stay in my lane and defer people to you so that they can get the best information possible.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, we're on a mission to help practitioners and to help people working on their health to be completely empowered in their own lives, and I just want you guys to understand that when we're talking about advanced strategies, I'm not expecting you to move to the woods and live in the dark on leaves. You can, that would be lovely, but I live in a town, I live in a city right up against other people, right on this beautiful lagoon, but we're kind of smushed in together. And we've figured out how to problem solve all the routers and stressors around us, and we live very happily and healthily. And I have to use technology for our stuff all the time. We're on technology right now, and I've been able to measure and mitigate it so that I am completely safe right now, and I'm not depleted at all. So it's absolutely possible, and I always want you to remember that anytime you're thinking about EMFs, come from the space of possibility, because it's entirely doable, and you can get your whole family on board and excited about this. I speak teen very well. Trust me, I've gotten a lot of teens to change their behaviors. They really get excited when they realize, oh, hey, these companies have been trying to take advantage of me, but I'm in charge of my well-being. It's really interesting to watch the shift. So yeah, you can always learn from us, that you can always investigate with your own meters first. You can get those in our mitigation shop. You're welcome to. And there's many meters on the market. We use the ones that are the simplest to use because we want people to be empowered immediately. So measure, measuring is an important step. You could take our class, Rapid EMF Reset. The next one is in November. That's really fun. You can hop on the wait list. We'll post the link below. But you could start today by unplugging everything in your bedroom, and the trajectory of your life could change just from that alone. I'm not kidding, because that's what happened to me. It's what happens to our clients all the time. And go ahead and do a little audit of your house and ask yourself, does that need to be plugged in? Am I using the smart functionality on that device? Does my fridge really need to have the Wi-Fi on? Because I mean, do you really care if your Bluetooth keyboard, like, what is that really doing for you? Like, just wire it. It's not helping you. Now you got to worry about a battery, and then you're getting blasted all day long, right at your gut level. No, thank you. Your microbes don't want that. Not the happy ones anyway. So these are little things that you can do right now that don't require any other help. And if you'd like to learn more and you really want to take your health into your own hands, absolutely come join us for Rapid EMF Reset.
Awesome. I've shared the link. And if you're watching the podcast, we'll put the link, or listening to the podcast rather, we'll put the link in the show notes for you to check out. Certainly, thank you for enlightening us. I want to be sensitive to your time. I know you have a busy day serving humanity and saving the world one router at a time, right? Thank you, Sinclair. This has been so powerful. I do have a couple of questions, if you don't mind answering.
Great, let's do it.
These are like selfish questions that I want to get answered. So I get these ads for, phone protectors like Safe Sleeve. Can you speak to that? Just, is that something that we should all have or be investing in? Does it make a difference?
That's such a great question. So this is a Safe Sleeve. So it's on one side of this, it's got RF shielding, but it's not actually blocking the signal coming from your phone, because your phone has to have that to function. So if you're going to use a Safe Sleeve, and I have one myself, you want to think about it in terms of geometry. So this fun little device that we're all now attached to is emitting in a 360 direction. It's not just about receiving a signal, it's always blasting one. And for telecom companies to work, they're actually using every wireless device you have to bounce their signals to prop up their network. So you don't have to be using it in order for it to be affecting you. So if you don't have it on airplane mode, rest assured it's blasting you. In fact, we'll show that right now. So this is the phone on airplane mode. That's a little bit of background radiation from my neighbors. And then watch how much that went up. Whoa, and I'm not even using it. I'm not downloading anything, right?
This, that sound reminds me of the movie Signs with M. Night Shyamalan, when the aliens came and they were like listening into the message that was being through the baby monitor that was being sent to them. So if you haven't watched that movie, it's one of my favorite movies. But certainly that sound is horrifying to me, because
really creepy sound.
Yeah, it's like a really creepy
very
sound.
Convincing. So when you think about this, you want to have the shielding between your body and the device. Now, yes, I have a cell phone. I take almost every phone call that I can through the computer, so that I'm not exposing my body to that. And that's easy to do even when you're on the go. And if you have to use your cell phone, I recommend distance is your friend, because RF is distance squared. So a foot away from your body, it drops off dramatically in exposure. And then another foot, it makes a huge difference. So I always say arm's length away, shield between you and this, and on speaker. And the phone can function, your kids can still reach you. I know that's super important for parents, but you're protected. And if you have to keep your phone on, please don't put it on your body. But if you're going to put it on your body, please use the shielding between your body and the phone.
I need to get a man purse.
Yes, a man purse, exactly.
Keep my phone in there. Do they? And what's your take? Last question, and then
Sure.
I'll let you go. But what's your take on like those Faraday bags? So the ones that you put your phone in, are those okay to keep those in your pocket, I guess?
It's a great question. So the Faraday bags, there's many different types of fabric shielding. The cheapest ones are going to be sprayed on fibers. That's a lot of the products made in China. So be very wary of like a $5, shielding bag that's got, heavy metal fibers, falling off, and then you're breathing them. Okay. But the silver threaded bags do reduce the signal. They do. This is a really cheap meter, and it tells you so much about whether or not something is working. I really encourage you, whatever mitigation devices you experiment with, to measure, because you won't know any other way. We have a signal tamer in our shop that we encourage people to put over routers that dampens the signal but doesn't remove it completely. And that's what most of those shielded fabrics are doing. They're not blocking the signal, they're reducing it.
Yeah, we have that on our router, thanks to you.
Yeah.
And then you said something that really, made me wonder, and that is in China that women are required to wear RF protective clothing when they're pregnant, and it's actually by law that they must do that. Is that correct?
Yeah. And police are allowed to check, because when you're, this is a really essential thing to understand to protect our little ones. It's part of why we're so passionate about sharing this message. The placenta is actually a membrane that, the way it's structured, it magnifies RF signals. And some studies show by as much as 100 times. So your one cell phone resting on top of your belly is so much more intense on the most defenseless aged human being ever, and for little girls, even in the first trimester, we have the very beginnings of our lifetime supply of eggs. So you are affecting generations with casual exposure just by moving through time and space in our society today. So yeah, the Chinese are all over this. They figured this out. They don't want a generation that's crippled. And I really hope that we get to that point very soon here as well. There's a lot of good people doing the work to try to spread the message. Environmental Health Trust is a great nonprofit that's trying to spread this message. I encourage you guys to look them up. But yeah, China's not the only country that's protecting their citizens. Russia is a great example. The Russian government actually helped develop this dirty electricity meter with Stetzer, who's a former Air Force electrician or electrical engineer, because they wanted something that was very easy to help their citizens understand. Like, these are available in every public health, local public health administration throughout Russia, because they want to help their citizens understand how to lower their EMF exposure. That's pretty amazing. That's what we should be doing.
There's a lot of things we should be doing. But that's a whole different can of worms. I'm going to let you get on with your day. Thank you. You've been so kind, so generous with your knowledge. If you're watching, I've shared the link to sign up for Sinclair's waiting list for her upcoming program launch. And then if you're listening to the podcast, we've also got it in the show notes. Thank you. I am eternally grateful and appreciate your knowledge and your time
Always
today.
Here for you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and take a look at Sinclair's work. Connect with her on Facebook, on Instagram. Follow the amazing work that she's doing. This is very important. And it's usually the subtle, invisible energies that can destroy us. So that exposure is 24/7 for most of us. And so it's important that we do something to mitigate that. So thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again for living your best life. And I hope this applies to you personally and for you practitioners in your practice to help you solve some of those challenging cases. Okay, bye everyone. Make it an awesome day.